Okay, so in this video, I am going to walk you through all of the steps on how we will complete a map in our class. Now, the map that I've chosen today is one that should be familiar to you because it is Kansas. This is where we live. Now, in our class, we of course study ancient civilizations, but I thought it would be best if we start with a familiar place in order for you to understand how we're going to create maps in our class. So you should have already received a paper that looks like this, and this should be glued in your spiral. We've talked about a title and a compass rose already, but I'm going to emphasize that again. So every map we make this year is going to have a title, and you should know that a title names the place and shows what the subject of the map is. If you have already, you should have flipped your big world map over, and this is where your Kansas map appears. I want you to take a look at the checklist off to the side. And the first step says use appropriate title. So the title of our map is going to go up here on this big bolded line. And we don't want to just call this Kansas map because that would only tell us the place. Kansas map of what? And there's no legend here yet, so you probably don't even know what are we going to make this a map about Kansas? Is it going to be a road map? Is it going to be a population map? Well, I'll give you a sneak peek. Over here, it says in the legend that we're going to show landscape and we're going to show resources. So the title that I want you to write at the top of your map is this, Kansas. And then usually we do like a colon, landscape. And resources. Kansas, landscape, and resources. This tells us the name of the place. This is what the map is teaching us. And to be honest, this is the title that you're going to use on all the maps all year, except you just change the name of the location. So when we study Mesopotamia, it'll be Mesopotamia landscape and resources, or India landscape and resources. Once you've completed a step on your map, you want to go over here and we just check off that step. Usually we put the check mark at the end in case we end up writing a grade or a score on the line. So just check off that step. All right, we've already completed step number 1. We're now moving on to step number 2. If you look at your checklist, it says include a compass rose with cardinal and intermediate directions. We've learned about a cardinal rose on this little paper that you've glued into your spiral. So I want you to draw a compass rose now with me on your paper. And a good spot to do that would maybe be up here. You've probably been taught a little trick to remember how to label, like never eat soggy waffles. I now have my cardinal directions drawn. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to add like a little X in the middle and add my intermediate. Notice I have all capital letters. Northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest. I now have all cardinal and intermediate directions complete, so I'm going to check off that I did step 2. Moving on to step 3. If you look at your chart, step 3 tells you to include correct lines of latitude and longitude. You remember latitude and longitude lines. Those are the coordinate system by which you can find a location on anywhere on Earth's surface. Latitude lines, remember, are a measurement of the location either north of the equator, above the equator, or south of the equator. We talked in my class about how those lines are like rungs on a ladder, like latitude, flatitude. Those are like a ladder that you're climbing either up above the equator or down below the equator. Latitude lines are the flat horizontal lines. Longitude lines are the vertical lines, and they're a measurement either east or west of the prime meridian. So typically you would look at a picture of a map, and usually on the maps that we give you in class, we provide some latitude and longitude lines drawn for you. This particular picture has one latitude line drawn here and a longitude line drawn here. we're going to label those, and I'm just going to give you the answers. So this very first latitude line, this is about 40 degrees north of the equator. So we put 40 degrees north. This longitude line here is 100 degrees west of the prime meridian. But I want to add 2 more lines because I really kind of want to box in the area. So I'm going to draw another line. You want to do this too. Draw a line of latitude right across the border of Kansas. And this here is about 36 degrees north of the equator. And I want to draw in one more longitude line right about here. And if I'm working my way toward the prime meridian, which the prime meridian is 0, my numbers are going to count down. This is going to be about 95 degrees west of the prime meridian. If you can picture Kansas on a globe, you should know that we are in the northern hemisphere, and we are also in the western hemisphere. We are in the northwest quadrant of the world. So our latitude and longitude is labeled. We want to go over to step 3 and check off that step now. All right, we are ready for step 4. On your list, step 4 says use labels to show the name of the region or civilization. Now this is an important step because all the other steps after this are going to require you to need an extra resource. And in our class, we call these Cornell notes. So right here, this is the top part of a chart that goes along with Cornell notes. And we have all the information we need about the state of Kansas and the impact it has on geography. This side of the notes will help us with the climate, will help us later on, but we're really focusing on this column here. So the name of the region or civilization. Well, Kansas is not a civilization, so we're going to go with the state. In that case, this is the name. Kansas is located in the Midwest. It's a very central location. We're going to write the name Kansas right in the center. I've now completed step 4, so check off that step now. Let's move on to step 5. In step 5, it says use labels to show any important cities. Well, how do you know what cities? There's tons of cities in Kansas. You only want to stick with the ones that you've taken notes on in our class. These notes have been provided for you, and we have 3 different cities here on our notes. So we're going to include Kansas City, Topeka, and Wichita on our notes now. So Kansas City, right about here. Next, let's label Topeka. And you could ordinarily look at another map to help you with that. Actually, let's see, Topeka is going to be right about here. And Wichita is the last city. I have all 3 cities listed on my map. All 3 cities here. Let's check off step 5 now. Step 6 says use labels to show all of the region's major landforms. Well, we haven't talked about what a landform is yet, but you have some notes, and it says a landform, one of the features that make up Earth's surface. These might include mountains, a river, a lake. Think about landforms as items that have a form or a shape. These are often so important if they're given a specific name. So Mount Everest, a specific mountain. The Nile River, a specific river. Lake Victoria, the Deccan Plateau, the Sahara Desert. These are all examples of landforms. You can see the form and the shape. Now you might be thinking, why is a river a landform? Well, it's a landform because you can see the shape and curvature of a river. whereas you can't see that in an ocean. So rivers, lakes, mountains, deserts, plateaus, especially if they have a specific name, are a land form. So on our map of Kansas, land forms might be hard to know. We have to refer back to the note page. We have 4 landforms we're going to include on our map. Mount Sunflower. I was stretching myself to try to find the closest thing to a mountain, as close to Kansas as we could. So the Mount Sunflower, Kansas River, the Arkansas River, and the Missouri River. So we're going to be drawing 3 rivers on here. Of course, these rivers help provide Kansas with fertile farmland, which is going to come into play in just a bit. So land forms. I'm going to draw and label the Missouri River first, which is kind of borders this little area up along the boundary line there. Missouri River, label it, capital M-I-S-S-O-U-R-I, river. Missouri River. Next, I'm going to draw the Kansas River. That starts way out here outside of the border of Kansas. It's going to flow through Topeka and down into Kansas City. This is the Kansas River. And our last river is the Arkansas River. Kind of curves, and then it comes down through Wichita, heads down to Arkansas. So this is the Arkansas River. Arkansas River. All the words on my map are proper nouns, so it's important that they start with capital letters. And lastly, Mount Sunflower. I'm looking at a picture of Kansas to help me plot this in the right place. You maybe hadn't heard of Mount Sunflower. I hadn't heard of it till I was desperately searching to find a little mountain in Kansas. Mount Sunflower. I believe I have all that I need. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have all 4 landforms. I am now going to check off step 6 on your map now. Step 7 says, use labels to show all of the region's major bodies of water. Well, a body of water, we don't have it listed on here, but a body of water is like an ocean, okay, or a sea. It may not come as a surprise to you that guess what? Kansas has no lakes or seas, no major lakes or seas. So we basically can just check off step 7 because Kansas, unfortunately, does not have any of those features for us. But on future maps, we will be labeling lots of different oceans. Step 8. Now, step 8 and 9 are where you're going to end up needing a colored pencil. It says use appropriate color shading and a legend. We're finally going to make a legend to show the type of landscape in the region. Landscape, if you look at your note page, landscape describes a type of land characteristics of a particular region. You're describing the way the land looks or the way the land is covered. You might say something like you're describing that the land is rocky or hilly, or it's covered with fertile land, or it's sandy or mountainous. This is the way the land looks as it is covered. And so landscape is different than landform. Landscape, we're always going to color in. It's covering the land, just like the carpet covers the floor of the classroom. Landforms have a form and a shape, and you can see them on the landscapes. You can see them sticking up out of the landscape, or like a river carving its way through the landscape. So I need to now refer to the Cornell note page to find out about what landscape to include in Kansas. And it's pretty easy. There's really only one main type, fertile plains, which of course helps us have great farming and agriculture. So it says on my note page, color shading. So this is when I know I'm going to need a color. And any color will work, but typically if we're going to need a color that makes me think of something fertile, like grass or is green. And so I'm going to go with a green colored pencil here. Now in the legend, we're going to draw a legend. Let's do this over here. A lot of lines going on, but write the word legend. And I'm going to draw in like a little square that I'm going to color in green, and I'm going to label it fertile plains. Fertile plains. Color in that square green. So this is now my key, my legend. So that helps anyone who's reading my map know that any area that is colored green on the map is fertile plains. Typically when you are knowing how do you color, how do you know where the fertile plains are, you look at a topographical map of the region. I've already done that, so you can just copy after me, and we're going to color shade in the region for fertile plains. So it may help actually. I'm just going to outline kind of the border of Kansas first, because that can get a little tricky because we've got a lot of lines on the page here. Whoops, which I think actually I got Wichita down too low. Let's erase that. Let's put Wichita here. Oops. Okay. Now, when we're coloring in your landscape, it's best to use a colored pencil, because markers are too dark, then you can't see anything you've labeled. Colored pencils color lightly and neatly. So all of this represents it. Pretty much everywhere in Kansas is fertile plains. See that. All right, you can choose how light or heavy, but I like to have it light enough that I can see through. And the lighting is a little bit hard to see. Okay, but I've colored in the whole entire state of Kansas green with these fertile plains. I have fertile plains in my legend. Fertile plains are now colored all over the landscape. I am going to check off step 8 now. Step 9 says, use important symbols and legend to show important resources of the region. So we're going to add more to the legend. Our resources on your little paper. Resources are materials found on Earth that people value and use. Water, plants, animals, copper, gold, these are resources. In every civilization we study, we're going to be learning about the resources that people were able to trade and use to bring in money. Now in Kansas, a main resource here based off of the landscape is wheat, grain. And I know this because in the notes it says wheat. And that is how a big source of income for Kansas. So I need to make up a little symbol for wheat because step 9 says use a symbol in the legend. So my symbol for wheat is just going to look kind of like that, like a little corn stalk kind of. And I'm going to label it wheat in the legend. And now, because wheat's going to grow anywhere where fertile plains are, I'm just going to put little wheats where I want. However many you like. I'm going to spread them out all over Kansas. Technically, Mount Sunflower is not even in Kansas, so you can see that. Okay. I now have wheat represented in multiple areas on my map. Wheat is in my legend. I am now complete with step 9. Check off step 9. And we're ready for step 10. Step 10 says include an accurate description of the climate below the map. Climate. So climate on your half sheet means the typical weather conditions of an area, what the weather is like. If you were to look up the weather in Kansas, you would probably find this information. We would look at our Cornell Note page now to know what to include. It says highly changeable, Tornadoes common. In other words, Kansas needs to be ready for extreme weather. Tornado drills in basements and being in the basements of your houses are ways people deal with that. So for climate, though, it is important that this is a complete sentence. So I'm going to take these words here, and I'm going to make it a complete sentence down here on the lines below my map. That's always where we want to write our climate. So you can say something like start with a capital letter, the climate of Kansas, capital K, is, using the words from the text, highly changeable. And tornadoes are common. That's all I really need to write. Based on the notes, if you wanted to go over and beyond, you could add a sentence on, this impacts the people of Kansas. They might do tornado drills in school or stay in the basements of their home. But for now, this is short and sweet and to the point. I've used my notes. I've described the weather conditions of the area. I can check off step 10, check off step 10 now. Now, for the most part, our map is complete. Steps 11 and 12 are just a self-check for you. So did you demonstrate attention to quality and craftsmanship? Did you write neatly? No, I did write with an erasable pen. Typically, you would write with a pencil. I didn't use like a green highlighter to color in. That would look kind of messy. I can see the labels through my coloring. I used the best handwriting that I had. So I would say self-check, yes. I'm good with step 11. Step 12 is a self-check to go back and check your spelling, punctuation, capitalization. A lot of times kids forget to capital little things like latitude or longitude, or like the letters on the compass rose. Always check your title. Kansas starts with a capital K. Landscape, resources. Now in my legend, they don't need to be capitalized because they're not proper nouns here, but everything else is, so it starts with a capital letter. I've got a period at the end of my sentence here. I'm feeling good. I'm considering this done. Now, after every map that you create in class, you will have a quiz over the map. You will have a quiz over all of the different steps that you completed, and there will be a quiz after this video.